From the nation's capital, the Conservative Caucus presents Conservative Roundtable, an in-depth look at today's most important issues.
Welcome to Conservative Roundtable. I'm Howard Phillips, chairman of the Conservative Caucus, which sponsors Roundtable. We're pleased to have as our guest William Wickens, an attorney, a graduate of DePaul University, University of Michigan Law School, a man who has done many things, giving him expertise in areas of energy, foreign policy, intelligence, etc. At one point in his life, he was invited to work with Senator Robert Taft Jr. of Ohio, and he became Taft's Director of Legislation and Research. As an attorney, he's represented American oil companies for more than 30 years. Tell us about your connection with Bob Taft. How did you hook up with him?
Well, I had a job offer at Cravath, Swaine & Moore, which I accepted.
Which is one of the top 5 or 10 law firms in the United States.
And before I showed up for work, I decided not to take it, that my father's dream had been for his son to practice law with him in the steel town of Lorain, Ohio. So I said goodbye to Cravath and joined my father, who as a young man actually had worked with Eliot Ness and interdicted whiskey coming across Lake Erie.
Not even John Dillinger, just the whiskey.
Just the whiskey.
Okay.
And Ness was actually based in Cleveland, not Chicago.
Okay.
In the fall of 1970, Bob Taft Jr. was running for the Senate, and I thought it was not a good campaign. And so for reasons which I don't...
Who was his opponent?
That time it was Howard Metzenbaum.
Who later became a senator.
So,
who made his money in the parking lot business.
And other ways, yes.
And other ways, not always honest.
So I wrote Taft, who I'd never met, a letter and said that I thought he was going to lose the election, and I told him why I thought he was going to lose it. And it never occurred to me that he would really see the letter, but I thought I wrote it, I got it off my chest, and much to my surprise, he called me and said that he was going to be in Cleveland the following Sunday, and would I have breakfast with him? So I said, sure, I'll go and have breakfast with you. And we had a nice long discussion, and it ended up that he had a 250,000 vote swing in those northern industrial cities, which allowed him to win the election by 50,000 votes. And he wanted me to come to Washington and run his...
Now, how did you do that swing? Did it have something to do with work you did with ethnic populations?
Yeah. I mean, I told him that there were what used to be called lousy Democrats in Ohio.
Oh, what a great Democrat he was.
He was a great Democrat. And I said, in my high school class, there were over 40 languages spoken. And most of them were from Eastern Europe: Croatian, Serbian, Slovenian, Polish, Lithuanian, Latvian, and so forth. I said, all of these kids have got relatives who live behind the Iron Curtain that we really created at Yalta. And I said that their relatives...
We meaning Franklin Roosevelt.
Well, me meaning Averill Harriman and a lot of other... The State Department establishment. I said, these kids can't visit their relatives. Their relatives have a hard time worshiping their God. They've got no freedom of speech. They don't have freedom of travel. And they don't have as much good food as God intended. Now, I said, there's a message here. Let's appeal to them. So they have all had ethnic clubs. In Lorain, you had the Ukrainian National Home, the Croatian Home, the Serbian Home, 2 Polish clubs. And I said, let's go. I said, I don't want to spend any money. Let's not do any advertising. I just would like you to come with me and visit these ethnic clubs. And it'll be the same message, that your relatives deserve to be free, and I'm going to do something about it. And without any press being present, no advertising, no endorsements, we got a 250,000 vote swing in cities like Cleveland, Youngstown, Akron, Toledo, Lorain. Interestingly enough, in 1980, there was another man who was running in that Great Lakes area, and that same strategy was very successful, except it went from Buffalo to Chicago and Milwaukee.
That was a fellow named Reagan.
Reagan.
Yeah.
So anyway, it worked out well, and I went to Washington as his director of legislation.
I wish I had known you in 1973 when you were in that position, because I was trying to kill the Federal Legal Services Program, and Bob Taft was one of 4 senators who unfortunately saved it. And if I had known you then, history would be a little bit different.
Well, it might have been, but there were a lot of things that needed killing more than that, Howard.
I'll argue with you about that on a different program.
Okay.
Let's talk about energy, and that's an area of expertise for you. We've got this big problem in the Gulf of Mexico, and what could have been done to prevent this problem? What should have been done once the problem was evident? Why did Obama and his administration not take advantage of the provision in the Jones Act sooner, which enabled the intervention of foreign ships to help deal with the excess oil? Give us your views on this.
Well, first of all, I blame BP. I do not blame the industry. I've represented oil companies for a long, long time.
What are some of the companies you represented?
Shell, Getty, Skelly, independents like Taylor Energy. I mean, my God, Pat Taylor out of New Orleans told me with pride that with all of his platforms, which he all owned individually, with no partners, no shareholders, he hadn't spilled as much as a teacup of oil in his entire career. BP has been one of the most reckless companies in the history of the oil industry in the United States. They've had more fiery explosions in refineries and fires than any company I know about. They just had recently a major leak in Alaska, which is because they hadn't done proper maintenance. And then this Horizon, which, by the way, was not their most unsafe platform. That's the Atlantis, which I'm amazed that the Atlantis hasn't gone up. Oil industry is safe not because of federal regulation. It's safe because of good, safe industry practice. People who know how to drill oil safely. Cowboys don't stay on their horses because of federal regulation. They stay on it because they know what they're doing. BP, in this particular case, was told by the rig operator that the blowout preventer, which is the safety valve down there, was defective. Good industry practice says you stop everything.
So they had known this?
Oh, sure. And they said, we must replace it and stop everything and replace it. BP said, under our contract, we're in charge, go forward. So they went forward, knowing that they had a defective blowout preventer. Well, the next safety thing is you're supposed to have plugs set in dried concrete in the pipe. So if the blowout preventer doesn't work, the pipes will, or the plugs will. They knew that the plugs were not set, and they went ahead anyway. The safety alarm was shut off. They knew that. Then they withdrew the drilling mud. Now, the drilling mud, for non-industry people, is very heavy, much heavier than water, and it means that if the blowout preventer doesn't work and the plugs don't work, this heavy cement will hold the gas and the oil down there in place and prevent a blowout. So BP said, no, we want to make time, we've got to make money, let's take out the mud and replace it with ocean water. So they took away all of the safety precautions, which I don't know if they're there because of the federal government. They're there because anyone who drills a well knows that this is the way you should operate. Now, BP has been a cost cutter and a corner cutter for a long time. Lord Brown, who used to run it, started this way back before he went into Tony Blair's cabinet. They've had a long history of this, and their chickens are coming home to roost. And by the way, the lifeboats, which were more than sufficient to take everybody off, left while there were still 12 people alive on this thing, and they just hightailed it. One guy, I don't know his name, jumped 90 feet down into oil and managed to be rescued by a passing boat, a fishing boat or something. The rest of them perished up there. Now that doesn't call for more federal regulation. It calls for a new company, a new management. And I mean, I think that with all of their fires and refineries and explosions, with all of the reckless things they've done in Alaska, that they should no longer be a guest in our country. Remember, Howard, that most everything that BP has in the United States, it acquired by taking over 3 American companies. It took over Amoco, it took over Arco, and it took over Sohio. Each of those were run by great Americans. I mean, you had Robert O. Anderson, one of the great leaders of the oil industry.
His son was a classmate of mine in college.
Well, good man.
And I had a good friend who was general counsel for Arco, Atlantic Richfield.
John Swearingen ran Standard of Indiana, which is Amoco.
Sure.
And Warren Spar ran Sohio. They didn't have these problems. They weren't the kind of reckless cost cutters that BP is. And the danger is that the way Obama is reacting by saying, well, we're going to shut everything down, they're going to penalize the companies that did it right. And when you make this kind of shutdown, rigs already that we need to produce American oil and generate American jobs and tax revenues are being sent to Brazil. My own stepson is down in Brazil, and he's one of the chief engineers on this massive new oil project down there. And he says, we're very anxious to get our hands on these rigs.
Incredible. If you were President of the United States, what would you do about our oil-related energy policy?
Well, first of all, I'd have one. And I think that the idea that we're going to basically shut down the Gulf and export our jobs and our tax revenue to the Arabs is an outrage. Some of the most loyal Americans we've got are these people who live down there in Cajun country, and they're hardworking and decent people. None of this was their fault, and they're going to be made to pay the price. It's like somebody in Washington who lives in a very comfortable lifestyle says, well, gee, these folks didn't suffer enough with Katrina. Yep. We're going to now take their jobs away. To show you that this is not an industry problem, but it's a problem with BP, which I think is a rogue company. They sent out letters and contracts to these fishing boat companies or owners and say, if you want work, we'll give you a job. And then in the fine print, you know what it said, Howard?
Tell me.
That if you take this job, you waive your right to sue us. That was slipped in. Now, no one's going to tell me that was slipped in down there on the Gulf. Somebody high up in the corporate offices put that in there to destroy their chances to sue for loss of income, for damage to their property, to damage to their fishery grounds. That was put in it was corporate venality at its worst.
There's been a lot of suffering. We have to take a break. When we come back, let's talk about coal, which is a much neglected topic. And let's also talk about what's happening in the United Kingdom. You've spent a lot of time in Britain, and right now there is a coalition government which is called conservative at its top, but in fact has been very left-wing, promoting a homosexual agenda, many, many other outrageous policies. Stay with us, and we'll be back with William Wickens, who is a man of great knowledge.
It's Bill, except formally.
Those who know him well call him Bill, and I appreciate the chance to call you by your friendship name. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Bill Wickens.
You are a defender of liberty. You spoke out.
That is part of your job.
You were heard in Congress.
No.
You marched. You created a new movement. You endured attacks.
You see folks waving tea bags around.
Now you can help to
Repeal the bill.
go to sendtheramessage.com. Print the pledge to repeal Obamacare. Send it to your representative, senators, and candidates to sign that they pledge to repeal the bill. Repeal the bill. Repeal the bill.
Repeal the bill. Repeal the bill. Repeal the bill. Repeal the bill. Repeal the bill.
Repeal the bill now. Go to sendtheramessage.com and help.
Repeal the bill.
Hello, I'm Steve Forbes, chairman of Forbes Media, here to urge you to watch Conservative Roundtable if you want to learn about the issues that matter and what you can do to get our country back on the right track.
Welcome back. I'm Howard Phillips, chairman of the Conservative Caucus, which sponsors Conservative Roundtable. Our special guest is Bill Wickens, a distinguished attorney, an expert on energy, and someone very knowledgeable about what's happening in the United Kingdom and the European Union. Before we leave the topic of energy, tell us a little bit about the future of coal as a contributor to America's energy needs. You know, there's so much concern expressed by environmentalists about the effect of coal mining on the environment. We've seen so many people who are coal miners being trapped, some of them losing their lives. What should we be doing about coal?
I think, Howard, that we should understand that coal must be an essential ingredient, and perhaps the most important one in terms of America's energy future. And I say this as someone who's never represented a coal company.
What interested you in this?
What interested me is the cost of production of 1 kilowatt hour of electricity. For coal, it's between 3 cents and 4.5 cents. For solar, it's 36 cents. And that doesn't include the cost of tax credit subsidy, which goes to those producers. For wind farms, it's 7 cents plus the tax credit subsidy, and you've got to, for solar and wind farms, you've got to have backup power stations because the sun doesn't shine all the time and the wind doesn't blow sufficiently. So you've got to have very expensive standby capacity. So coal is the cheapest except for hydro, and can be the cleanest except for hydro. Now, everyone says, well, gee whiz, coal is dirty, and it is, and it's sulfuric, and why do we want to have coal plants? Well, Howard, there's good news. There are U.S. and German patents and technologies out there, and I became very close to several of those, which will clean up the coal. It's called a sorbent technology, where as the coal is going into the furnace, you spray it, and unlike stack gas scrubbers, it will actually remove not only the sulfur, but it will get rid of the heavy metals, which stack gas scrubbers won't do. Now, why isn't it being used? We were offered, I'm part of a group of, there's a couple guys in Michigan and myself and a very important man that no one knows anything about in Singapore, and we were talking to an inventor, and we said we'd like to have the Asian and European rights to this, and he said, yeah, but we want you to take the rights in the United States. And we said we don't want the United States rights. And people would think, well, gee, that's awful mean and nasty of us. Why would we not want to bring this technology to the United States? And there are really a couple of reasons. First, we know that Obama is in love with these more expensive technologies. And just think about it. If we don't do this coal thing, he's going to put a carbon tax on coal. He's already said he is. And so that your electric bill is going to go up 300 or 400% for every man, woman, and child, and for our auto plants and steel mills that use an enormous amount of electricity. It's going to make us an uncompetitive nation if we have these carbon taxes. But if you do that, they can drive this coal technology out of business. The other advantage is that if you have a major power plant, let's say you're Phillips Energy.
No relation to Phillips 66.
No. If you want to build a stack gas scrubber, it's cost you $150 million. If you want to use this technology, it's about $150,000. So there's a great saving, but that's one of the reasons why it may not happen, because the way we regulate utilities is if you have a lot of capital costs that are in your capital base, you get to raise your electric rates. Well, if you don't have the need for stack gas scrubbers, electricity prices are going to go down instead of up. And so the utilities in the United States don't like it. And the Obama administration doesn't like it. And so I see very little chance that this is going to be widely accepted within your lifetime or mine in the United States, but it's going to sweep China and India and Indonesia.
Now, did you take the rights for any of the Asian or European countries?
We are working with 2 companies on that. Don't have them signed up, but
well, I wish you success.
Well, we can market it. The reason we have the man in Singapore is that he is very close to both governments.
That's a great country, by the way. We're going to have to take a break, and when we get back, I'm going to ask Bill Wickens to use the remaining time to discuss what's happening in the United Kingdom. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Bill Wickens.
Hey, listen. This is the greatest thing. I want to tell you something. Something's happening in this country. And I want to tell you, look around my friends here. My friends here in Washington, come over here. See all these great people? These great folks are here because they want to take the country back to the direction of the Founding Fathers and stop all this nonsense that's going on and stop this, this immersion into socialism, which is happening. We've got to stop it. And every day we're losing a little bit of our freedom. But the answer is that the individual citizens can make a difference. They can walk through these houses of Congress. They can look their congressman in the eye and say, hey, vote this bill down. Get rid of it. We got a lot of work to do. And the first thing we have to do is get rid of the garbage and the attacks on our freedoms. This is it. So anyway, that's what these guys are doing here today to do. Yes! And I say, all of you guys out there, within the sound of my voice and the visual that this great gentleman has created, get down here and do your responsible citizenship by going and seeing your representatives and telling them, what you want, because this is your house. It's not their house. Get in there and tell them what to do, and let's begin cleaning this country up. A big mess has been created in only a year's time, in 9 months' time, really. A big mess we have to recover from. We got to start working. We got to throw some people out. So anyway, I love this country. I love you. Go do your job.
Thank you for your help. Thank you.
www.conservativeusa.org. If you want more information, that's where you'll find it. Contact us at 703-281-4108, our fax. And now, Bill, in the time remaining, tell us about the United Kingdom.
There is no significant party which is in any way conservative in Britain. Now I know time is limited, so instead of discussing it, I'm going to read you a laundry list.
Go.
David Cameron is the leader of the Tories, which used to be conservative. In the campaign, he said he was against Thatcherism. He's against grammar schools, which give poor kids an opportunity for a leg up. He's an environmentalist who wants to build houses on London's green belt. He promised to keep Labour's tax increases and massive spending. He doesn't have any effort to reclaim Britain's fishing grounds from the EU.
On spending, doesn't George Osborne, as Chancellor of the Exchequer, doing something to cut spending?
They have had to backtrack on it just about 3 weeks ago.
Go ahead.
They want to give school dropouts the opportunity to buy alcohol at a younger age. He was silent when a vicar was arrested for distributing scriptural passages in front of homosexuals in Wales. His campaign told people to go out and hug hoodies, which are street thugs. He wants to stay in the EU, and that's 10 shows, not one.
And he's avoiding a referendum.
He is avoiding a referendum. Last week, the EU ambassador in Washington said he is the one who speaks for all the people of Europe. Well, I hope that there's enough testosterone in our State Department to tell the British and the French embassies that they can now close.
Well, we have to ask Hillary about the testosterone.
Yes. Finally, he was in...
We're off the air. We're going to have you back.
Oh, I didn't get to tell the Carlton Club story.
Because you know so much. We'll have you back. Why don't you come to our next show? Thank you for watching Conservative Roundtable, and thank our guest, Bill Wickens, and excellent job. Thank you.